That's how the sugar diet works, is you're getting some really good, quick hitting energy and you're feeling really good and the scale's going down. Like, that's rare to have those things happen. I'm sure along the way you have probably done things where you nearly passed out in the gym or just passed out from standing up. Your blood sugar's all over the place. Your body's reacting all crazy. And I don't think it has to be that way. And I think that I really do believe that the sugar diet is like a revolution.
I have questions, Mark. But by the way, Mark Smelly Bell, welcome back to the American Glutton Podcast. It's been a minute, sir.
It's been a while, yeah, a couple years probably.
How are you? You're wonderful. You're eating lots of sugar. You feel great. You look fucking jacked and peeled and tan.
Thank you so much. I got a banana right here just in case such an emergency occurs.
Okay. How did the Steak Shake man himself, all things meat and protein and carnivore, become a sugar guy? What happened? What's going on here? I just want to know what is. The first time I saw you talk about it on Instagram, I thought you were trolling.
Maybe I am.
Are you trolling?
It's a well-planned troll action, I've known Cole Robinson for a long time, Snake Wizard Diet on YouTube and Instagram. And maybe like a year and a half ago, he started talking about sugar and all this stuff. And I was like, I listened to a couple of videos. I was like, oh my God, like my friend, he like jumped the shark. Like he left the reservation. Like maybe he lost his mind a little bit. I didn't know what he was talking about. But I've known him for a long time and he's been about weight loss for a long time. And then I just started kind of looking some stuff up. And I actually remember a conversation you and I had about where your weight loss journey started. And I remember something to the effect of like pretty much a liquid diet. I think it was like fruit and vegetables or something like that, pretty much. And as I started to think about it more and look into it more, I was like, I also remember Ray Pete. There's a guy named Ray Pete that people can look up on YouTube. He had a lot of great information and talked about how people were overcoming like diabetes and stuff like that with basically sugar. And anyway, long story short is like, we have to know some truths. Like there's some truths to stuff, right? Fruit is good for us. Vegetables are good for us. Meat is good for us. Dairy is good for a lot of people. Maybe not everybody. Some people might have a hard time digesting certain things or whatever, right? But we just know that like a lot of those things seem to be relatively good for us and maybe not for all of us because, again, different variations of people being able to digest stuff and so forth. But what really got me fired up about this plan, sugar fasting, sugar diet, was how well it was working. So I started to kind of comb through some comments. The comments are usually like, F you, carnivore diet's better, keto diet, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't like that. There were people that were like, hey, I tried this for 7 days and I lost 8 pounds. Or I've been doing this for the last 2 weeks and I can't believe I lost 6 pounds and my arthritis is gone. Like people are having like their pain disappear. And we've seen this before. Like this has happened before. We got to give credit to carnivore and keto. Like those are good interventions. And by no means am I saying those are bad interventions. I think any intervention is better than whatever you're currently doing to be 300 pounds, 400 pounds, 500 pounds. Obviously that's not a great place to live. So like, let's figure out how to give people options. And for me, I love shit that works. When I find something that works, I'm like, holy shit, this is awesome. And I like to explore that more and more. And I like to give people options.
Yeah.
Having children, my son is now 21 and he's a director, by the way. So he was excited to hear that we were getting together on this show for today. And my daughter is 17 and raising children. I wasn't given, my parents were awesome, but I wasn't always given like a lot of options. It was like my way or the highway. It was, you get this one option and then you kind of bitch about it and you get over it. But with my own children, I found it to be really valuable if I can just give them options in whatever way I can. And it seemed like it was easier to get them to do do things in the direction that I want them to do. Like if I said, hey, I'd like you to play an instrument. It's like, pick any instrument. Like, let's just figure out some music, right? Hey, I'd love you to do some exercise. Like we can go outside and play basketball. We don't have to go lift, right? We don't have to do rock climbing. We can walk on a trail. Options, I think, are really critical when you're trying to help people. And that's the basis of everything that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help people.
Okay. So, but like carnivore and keto have been espoused as long-term plans. I think my biggest question is the sugar diet like a cut for a bodybuilding show, or is this appropriate for somebody who's 500 pounds and going like, I need to lose weight? Is that something they would do for a year, or is this like because like the first weight I lost, I went from 550 to around 480 through a liquid diet. And I never actually put any of that weight back on. From 480 to 200, I bounced around a lot for years and years and years, up and down, up and down, up and down. But I never went back into the weight I had lost on the liquid diet. Now, I would go to just about anybody who's 500 plus pounds, even 400 plus pounds. And I would say like, yeah, you could totally start with a liquid diet, get some momentum, and then we would want to veer you off, because I don't think that's a great plan to get you all the way to where you want to go. Because the minute you start eating again, here comes the weight. You know what I mean? It's also would be really tough to stick to something like that for however long it would take to lose hundreds of pounds.
So there's more stricter versions of this. The way that I look at it is like, initially I thought this was like, oh, this is a fast. This is something that you do for a week or two. Or this is just an intervention that you use periodically. Like you use it like 3 times a week. Or if you're pretty happy with your body, but you want to keep fat off, maybe you use it a couple times a month. And the heavier that you are, maybe the more frequently that you use it. And then maybe you do it, I don't know, 100 days out of 200 days or something like that. And you get pretty strict with it and you knock off a bunch of weight. But after, doing it and then communicating with a lot of people and helping people through this, I started to realize like it's a system, and it can kind of be, you could curtail it to just about anybody. So if somebody is lean and they want to get leaner, then they're just going to use sugar fasting however much they need to get them in the appropriate shape that they're looking for. So that would be, in my opinion, for someone that's already in good shape, that's very active, maybe just do it every other day. What you do on the in-between days is obviously going to be really important, but you could just do a standard bodybuilding diet, and that would be great. If you're someone that's lifting and running and you're active and you need the starches and the glucose and so forth, then that would probably work awesome. If you're really, really heavy, then you're going to have to put consecutive days of sugar fasting together. And you also might not be able to go outside of fruit and fruit juice. Like you might be really confined, because what you did with the liquid diet, and what we can do with any diet, by the way, we can take any single food and just say, hey, if you just eat this single food, it's going to be really hard for you to fall off. It's going to not hard for you to fall off, because it's always easy to fall off. It's going to be hard to overeat on one food.
Right. There's a diet called the Beverly Hills diet, which I was put on as a little kid, which I know there's more to it than this, but my memory was just days and days of pineapple. That's it. I would be given, you eat yourself silly on pineapple. And then maybe on like the 7th day you get bananas, and the bananas were like this miraculous thing, because like suddenly my mouth isn't on fire or like scorched from the enzymes in the pineapple.
You get food averse.
Right. You can't do it. If you said just all you eat is boneless, skinless chicken breast, the guy's going to lose weight. If you say just ribeyes, the guy's going to lose weight. It's hard, especially at morbidly obese, to pick any one food and you just can't put that much of it away.
And I have some friends that are very, very heavy that I've been helping for years, and we've knocked off 150 pounds, 100 pounds. They still have like 100 pounds to go. But what we talk about a lot is because I feel like they're on the other side hard to explain what that even means, but they've gotten to the other side. Like they are not going back. Like they will never go back. We won't have to have some of those same conversations that we had before. We won't have to have those ever again. They're basically like healed in some way. Now it's just a matter of like knocking off some extra weight to kind of, for them to see, better health outcomes. But for some of those people, I like them to actually just kind of take their time a little bit more. Like what's the big rush? You did the liquid diet, and I think there is something to doing liquid diet or doing, smoothies only, right? To kind of like ingrain this habit and to ingrain something like this new pattern where you're like specifically following this thing and you're doing it every day. I had some friends just a couple of days ago. I just said, hey, why don't you guys just work out every day? It's a couple. It's like you work out together. You're a little wishy-washy on your training. You're throwing it away here and there. You're getting in one good workout on a weekend. Why don't you have weights in your garage? Problem solved. Train every day. Is training every day the most optimal? No. You should have probably some days off a little bit here and there. But sometimes doing something every day gets you to really stick to something. So the same thing goes for sugar fasting. Somebody might want to do it every day. They might want to be a little bit militant with it because sometimes you need a kick in the ass. And most people respond really, really well to a regimen. Like if for certain people, if you let them kind of fly around and float around by themselves, it's going to make some really bad decisions. They're going to, eat a thing of candy, like a whole bag of candy, because they're sugar fasting. And you're like, whoa, pump the brakes right there. We don't really need that much energy coming in. There's always an energy equation to the whole thing.
I also think, there's a couple really important things in that. And I relate to them anecdotally. The first time as an adult that I was like, okay, I need to make a change. I need to do something. I didn't know who to turn to. And I talked to the girl who's now my wife, who's been my wife for a long time. But at the time, she was just my girlfriend. And I said to her, like, I was away in Romania doing a movie. And I said, I don't know what to do. Just tell me what to do. And she said, okay, while you're there, just don't eat bread. Now, for me at the time, I was like, bread is off limits. Bread is bad. I will not eat bread. But now I eat bread. And really the thing I took from it was just to implement one point of responsibility because prior to that, there was no responsibility. It was all chaos. It was just like, I'm thinking about Big Macs and I'm in Romania and have a chauffeur driver 24 hours a day, take me to McDonald's. You know what I mean? Like I'm hungry, eat food, and whatever I think of, that's what I'm going to eat. And so getting that single point of responsibility. And then, so I didn't eat bread. I didn't get on the scale in Romania. When I got back to Los Angeles, she had this liquid diet ready for me. But I had prepared for it by implementing this one point of responsibility. Then I backed that up with the liquid diet and lost a tremendous amount of weight very quickly, which gave me buy-in. I was like, I can do this. It was not easy, but I stuck to it. And so there was, I think it's exactly what you're talking about. Like I had momentum on my side and I had buy-in. I was into it. Then the other thing I wanted to mention is like, yeah, when you're talking about a sugar diet, like when I was 550 pounds, I might think of a sugar diet as eating, Hershey's bars all day or Nestle's Crunches. And then I'm not factoring in the fact that those have a lot of fat in them too, which might be counter to the effects of whatever sugar's doing and throw me off entirely and then screwing up the energy balance. I would find the thing, somebody was saying recently, like, I can't eat Doritos because they're a carby food. And I had to point out, well, there's the same amount of energy from fat in a Dorito as there are from carbohydrates. So it's in fact a carb and a fatty food.
Yeah, and they're delicious and you can't stop.
Right.
That's the toughest thing. I mean, if you have a sandwich from Subway, the problem starts to become not only are you having bread, you're having some, you're having some meat and so some protein in there, and maybe you throw some vegetables on there. It's like, oh, that sounds pretty good. But then you have cheese and then you have mayo, right? Or ranch or whatever it is that you put on there.
Yeah.
And now the calories are just starting to really add up. And you have a bag of chips and you look at the bag of chips, you're like, oh, there's only like 120 calories in here. Those small bag of chips, they're not a bad thing really. But, most of the time you're going to have like 10 of those bags of chips at your house, those little tiny bags or a giant bag. And it just makes it very, very difficult. What I'm trying to do in all cases, whenever I'm communicating with anybody about nutrition or exercise, I'm just trying to set you up the best I possibly can so you don't mess up. Yeah. Like, how do we make it to where it's almost unreasonable for you to fail? And I tell people all the time with training, go in the gym and just do some shoulders and arms. That's easy to talk yourself into. Like, even if you said, I'm going to do 3 sets of lateral raises and 3 sets of curls in between, and that's going to be my workout today. I guarantee you it's going to be very hard for you to go into the gym once you did those 3 sets of both of those and just to stop and leave. Yeah. Because the same thing happens with positive input that we don't even realize. Negative input, or I guess you are getting a lot of positive reinforcement from eating those Doritos. But the same thing can happen with things that are positive for us, and we don't really look at it that way. We're not paying attention to it in that same way. So you can get some really good momentum, and a good way to get momentum into sugar fasting is probably to start with the sugar diet. And the sugar diet is just basically splitting your day in half. So you're going to sugar fast throughout the morning, and then by night, you're going to have a lean source of meat and a starch. That diet right there, you can probably run for a few weeks. And for a lot of people, they're going to see tremendous weight loss. They're also going to be getting a wide variety of micro and macronutrients when you eat like that. The only thing is like what I try to convince people of, we're just trying to like really lower the fats quite a bit. Because you said one responsibility. So if you had one responsibility on the sugar diet, it would be to keep those fats maybe below like 50. Because if I give you just that one responsibility, maybe you mess up a little bit. Maybe you ate too much starch. Maybe you had a lot of pasta. It's really not going to be that huge of a deal because we're setting you up in a way where it's going to be more difficult for you to go over your caloric intake for the day, which I kind of hate people counting calories, and I'm urging people to not even bother, but people get obsessed with it. They have all these apps and they want to like really, but the reason why I don't like it is for this. A lot of times you're going to continue to drop those calories down. Your metabolism is going to kind of go along with it. And oftentimes people start to feel sluggish and they start to kind of feel like crap because they've been in a perpetual caloric deficit for a long time. I'd rather see you be in a unintentional caloric deficit where you don't even know. And that's how the sugar diet works, is you're getting some really good, quick hitting energy and you're feeling really good and the scale's going down. Like, that's rare to have those things happen. I'm sure along the way you have probably done things where you nearly passed out in the gym or just passed out from standing up. Your blood sugar's all over the place. Your body's reacting all crazy. And I don't think it has to be that way. And I think that I really do believe that the sugar diet is like a revolution. I don't think it's just something new. I don't even think it's something old either. There's some people who are like, oh, so-and-so is doing this. This diet, the way it's set up right now, is pretty rare. You can compare it probably to some juice fasting. That's a fair comparison. But anything else where the people are adding in like a lot of fat and protein and stuff like that, it's not the same diet at all.
No, it's not. It doesn't sound like the same diet. I will say, like, I don't count calories today. And today I'm strictly like doing everything in my power to actively maintain my weight. I don't know that I could have gotten to the place where I'm at today where I don't have to count calories, where I'm just eyeballing stuff and going like, this, where I'm recognizing that maybe a salad is overdressed, or peeling the skin off a piece of chicken, or cutting the fat off a ribeye, or a strip steak. Like, I used to slice off that fat and enjoy eating it. Like, honestly, if you cook the fat on a steak really well and it's a little crispy, like that's my favorite part. And now I might opt for, like, it's embarrassing for me to say this, but for a filet, which I think is like the least tastiest cut, but it's
May I
also
have the
very lean.
petite filet,
Right, yeah.
6 ounce?
Yeah, but I had to learn what a calorie was and what my daily energy need was, and I did spend, gosh, 2 years really diligently tracking my food. And then I finally was like, well, what happens if I'm not doing math all day today? And by the way, I started doing this before the apps were super fancy. And I had a book called Calorie King. And I would just go through that book and then weigh it. It was a nightmare. But I did it. And now I'm doing basically okay. But listen, I can't say I hate the interventions you're talking about. I think, like, giving anybody the tools to succeed with doing less work is maybe useful. My fear is that if a guy is in a caloric deficit for a long period of time and continues to lose weight, he's going to feel sluggish no matter what at some point. If you go from 500 pounds to 300 pounds, I can't imagine you're not going to feel sluggish without some kind of a break.
You're going to feel like shit, somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
And we're not even talking about, one thing I do want to point out, like, there's a lot of information that comes from, like, bodybuilding, because people love the way the bodybuilders look. A bodybuilder, though, a lot of times they're going from like 8% to 4%. And them, counting and tracking the calories and being super precise, like, their career is on the line, so they have to really, count and track and do all these things, and they will feel like shit. But the reason why they'll feel like shit is because they're doing a lot of cardio, they're doing a lot of extra activity, and their deficit to their output is crazy. They're increasing their output and they're decreasing their caloric intake. So intake and expenditure are heading in opposite directions, and they'll feel like crap. And you got to also, again, keep in mind that they're at very low body fat percentages. So I don't think that sugar fasting is going to be something that is going to take someone from 500 to 300 super easy, and that they're going to feel great the whole time. No, that's not the way any of this works. Like, it unfortunately, there are ways to circumvent some things, and there's ways to make things a little easier. The GLP-1s and some of these things have come along. They seem like they're fantastic. They're really helping people a lot. The sugar diet, sugar fasting can be something that can help a lot. There's a lot of diet interventions that people can do. And you can also try some sugar fasting for a little while and then switch over to something slightly different for a while. Like, there's nothing wrong with trying out some of these different protocols. But what I would strongly suggest that you don't go from one diet to nothing.
Right.
You have to have, if you're on a diet right now and you're like, F this diet, I can't stand it. I don't want to be on this thing anymore. I can't look at another piece of meat. Or you've tried sugar fasting, you're like, I don't want to look at any more fruit. This is gross. Whatever thing that you're doing now, make sure you're switching to something else that has some structure to it. Obviously, if you're a thinner person and you're pretty healthy, then you don't need to really worry about it as much. But if you're someone that's obese, I hear that a lot with, like, keto and stuff. People are like, oh, it worked. And then I got off and I gained all my weight back. You're like, well, you went back to the diet that you were doing previously to be fat in the first place. So of course it did. I mean, it worked while you were doing it. That means that it worked. Yeah. And I also want to point out for myself, utilizing keto specifically worked amazing for me. And also the paleo diet, because I was 330 pounds. And to lose weight, my start was the paleo diet, and then kind of moved into lesser and lesser carbohydrates, and then wrote a book, The War on Carbs. And here I am raging a different kind of war on carbs, I guess.
Yeah. You are the carb master now.
Right.
Well, listen, I think that we're always going to have these diets, these interventions are all, there's this one is a surprise to me, because I think I would assume you're getting a lot of pushback from the keto folk, because like the when I think about like the troubles in Ireland, that version of what I experienced through my algorithm on social media, it's all like carnivore versus vegans. Basically, I imagine like pitched battle in the streets of like different colored shirts of like the non-meat versus the only meat people. And now like there's you like standing in the background going, sugar's the third option is, you know, sugar, fruit and lean meat at night. And I think we're always going to have this. And I totally agree. Like, I don't think there's any one size fits all diet. I don't think that there's anything where you could just say everybody should do X. And so if you have somebody where you're like, damn, I tried keto, I couldn't digest that much meat. It was hard on me. I couldn't eat enough, or I could overeat. I could blow through it, and I wasn't losing weight, and I was only eating ribeyes, you know, and my 4 sprigs of broccoli drenched in olive oil at night, or whatever it is. You know, that's going to be tough. I'm glad you allow for 50 grams of fat per day, because that, I know when I tried to do like a very extreme bodybuilder diet and I tried to get my fat to under 30 grams a day, which was really, really tough to do, I felt like shit.
It can be too extreme.
Yeah.
You know, and you would have to like, that's when you would have to probably like, you know, maybe intentionally be paying attention to how many carbohydrates you're consuming to maybe try to make yourself not feel like crap. But I do want to point out, like, I do think just like keto has certain advantages and just like some other interventions have their advantages, I think there's some advantages to so far, you know, like there hasn't been that many people doing this for years. There's a couple of people that were like privy to this for a little while, but it seems like so far, again, the scale can go down and your energy can be up pretty good. There are people that are experiencing negatives. Like I'm posting a lot of positives on my Instagram, in my story. And I'm trying to share some of the negatives as well, but sometimes the negatives are like people just misinterpreting, you know, maybe what I'm saying or what's being said. There are people that are having some negative side effects. Some people are feeling very cold, and that's probably just from eating cold fruit. There could be other reasons why it's happening, but I don't know what they are. People are, you know, making smoothies and stuff like that. So these are things that are going to make you feel pretty cold. But I think over time, you're going to be able to figure out what some of these problematic things are for you. There's also people spiking their blood sugar like crazy and not feeling very well. And then they sit down, they're like, oh my God, they're kind of feeling a little dizzy. Some people are having a little bit of like blurred vision. And again, you do a keto diet and some people are feeling really ill. There's the keto flu. Sometimes people are doing carnivore and they talk about how they got to go to the bathroom every couple minutes. We're seeing the same thing with sugar fasting as well, where people, their stomachs are getting really bloated and distended. There's a lot of fiber, you know, eating berries and stuff like that. Maybe these are things you haven't eaten in a long time.
Yeah.
And if you think about, I like to compare it a little bit to milk. I think a lot of people, a lot of adults in fitness probably got rid of milk somewhere along the line, just regular milk. And if you go back to regular milk, you're going to have probably a pretty hard time digesting it. So these are sugars, just like what milk has lactose. You're trying to digest fructose and glucose and these things. And your body just maybe doesn't have the enzymes that it had before. And it might take time to build them back up. So I want to say that it's not without its faults, but I think it's still worth a try. And what I like to encourage people to do is to go low and slow. Like there's no reason why you can't just try the diet for like half a day and you're mainly just eating fruit. I mean, you probably had days like that without even ever realizing it or recognizing it. All you had was like some Jamba Juice or something like that. So give it a try and give it a shot and understand that like a smoothie you get from like Jamba Juice or most of these places, it's not some, like it would sound astronomical if you're someone that doesn't eat hardly any carbohydrate, but the carbohydrates in a lot of those drinks isn't like 700. You know, we're at home. If you go and pour honey in there or maple syrup or sugar, I mean, you could easily make a shake that has, you know, it could be like 1,500 calories. It could be, you know, nearly 1,000 grams of sugar or something like that. So you don't want to do that out of nowhere. this is an opportunity to train your body. And I think that's one of the points of the sugar diet is to train. You're trying to train your metabolism. You're trying to train your insulin sensitivity. And just like we're not going to go in the gym and try to squat 405 out of nowhere, there's no reason to jump into this. And just even like honey, I've had some people tell me, oh, I had, 5 or 6 spoonfuls of honey this morning and I don't feel well. And I'm like, did you realize that there's 17 grams of sugar? Like honey has the same amount of fructose or more than high fructose corn syrup.
Right.
Not saying honey's bad. Like there's nothing wrong with honey. I think it's fine. I think it's fair game, but
if you have sensitivity, that'll just sit in your blood and that doesn't feel good.
Right. 100%. And just do it out of nowhere. That's the main thing is like, you haven't really done this before. So maybe just start out with like 50 carbs, 75 carbs, start out by eating a banana. And then if you feel okay, maybe eat an orange, just take your time. But if you think about it, like a banana, if you had a banana and like an orange or two, like that, I don't think that's like a full meal, especially for someone that's big. They'll be like, come on, bro, I need more food than that. But that's decent to get you along to maybe the next meal, or that's a decent snack.
Yeah. Yeah. I like fruit a lot, and I actually don't think I eat enough fruit, but when I do eat fruit, it seems like a perfectly fine, I don't have an adverse reaction to it. I do want to say anecdotally, every time I go into a prolonged caloric deficit, I get cold on anything, whether it was keto or just drinking shakes, or even now, when I drop my calories for a couple of weeks, I get cold. I always thought it was just the thermic effect of food and not having enough in it, so my body's system is cooler, but I have no idea. And
it could be thyroid and stuff like that too, perhaps.
Yeah, this could be anything. I also, when I'm losing weight rapidly, I had this experience twice. When I was doing the shakes, I would black out or come very close to blacking out almost every time I stood up. And my hearing would go dull, my vision would go black, and I would feel wobbly and have to brace myself. And then the next time I experienced this was I did one proper bodybuilding cut for a photo shoot where we messed with my salt and my water. And then for a few days I wasn't drinking water and I kept pissing as much as I had been when I was drinking 3 gallons a day. And all this just to get as peeled as I possibly could. And the day of the photo shoot, I simultaneously felt wonderful and the shittiest I've ever felt, because I had this sense of pride of accomplishment. I was sub 10% body fat. I had visible abs. I had a vascular stomach. It was incredible.
Too. You were still holding on to some good size.
Yeah. And at the same time, every time I would flex my muscles, my vision would go dark, my head would go wobbly, and I would almost pass out. But I was getting through it on the adrenaline of pride and having gotten there. And then, by the way, that day I gained 9 pounds. So the next day I didn't look as good, or maybe I looked better. Maybe I filled out my muscles. I don't know. But I just remember getting on the scale the next day and going, holy shit, I gained 9 pounds yesterday. And I didn't go eat pizza or anything. You know what I mean? It was crazy. But yeah, I think that, this is one of the things that gets brought up all the time now is the amount of muscle wasting with the GLP-1s. I had muscle wasting on every diet I ever did. If you're 400 pounds, if you're not really doing everything very precisely, and to your point, taking it very slowly, you're going to have muscle wasting. There's just no way to lose 200 pounds of fat and not waste lean tissue. I don't think it's possible. Even with bodybuilders who have all the drugs in their arsenal and they're increasing their workout times, they're doing what you said, extra output with lesser input. They're still wasting a little bit of lean tissue. It might be to the grams or ounces at that point, but it's not possible to lose massive weight. And that is the one thing that I am interested or attracted to, because I did some AI research on the hormone increase that you talk about. And apparently that science checks out. And so there is a lean tissue protective mechanism that happens in a protein deficit, right? Because my entire life now is about the only thing I count, and I'm not counting it to the gram actively, but the only thing I am prioritizing every single day is protein. And so that is my big thing of like, as long as I get enough protein, I'm okay. I can have my rice. I can have a little olive oil. I can have my baked potato. But I front load lean protein. And so the idea of really diminishing that, going from 240 grams a day of protein to, I don't know if I could get all my protein and only 50 grams of fat. I don't know if I could even do that, you know?
Yeah. So there we go. That you hit the nail on the head. You mentioned lean meat. I don't want to scare anybody away from fat. Like, I think fat's awesome. And I actually think the ketogenic diet is amazing. I think the ketogenic diet, is superior than carnivore. I also think the sugar diet is superior to carnivore. The reason why the keto diet and the sugar diet are interesting is because with the sugar diet, you're lowering your protein. And with real keto, you're doing the same.
Yeah.
You start to knock out 2 macronutrients, and it starts to be very, very difficult. It gets harder to gain weight. There's some people that can gain weight doing anything. And I actually think that I'm very close to being one of them. I don't think I have like the obesity gene necessarily. So I'm not all in on that thing, but like there's some people that, you know, in my communication with some of my friends that have been obese, the way that they think about food is so different than like I think about food a lot. And I love food. And I came to this realization one time. I was out with some friends and everyone was like enjoying dessert like a normal, reasonable person and just eating these little pieces of it and they're sharing it back and forth. And they didn't even like finish their dessert, you know, and I like inhaled mine, didn't even share it with anybody because it was this peanut butter cup thing, right? And then they're like, hey, Mark, you want I was like, sure. And I downed all these desserts and it dawned on me, like, I don't care that much about alcohol, but I really care a lot about food. And I was just thinking to myself, man, my taste buds and my brain is wired differently than theirs. Like they didn't care that much about it, but I do. Like this is everything to me. This taste is so good. And I have friends that are even way beyond that. And so it's hard sometimes to try to figure out, you know, how do I help somebody that they've been basically completely unreasonable, completely irrational. They've been basically completely out of their mind for a long time with how they have addressed putting energy into their body, how they have addressed their hunger. And now we have to go really far in the other direction for probably a long time. We have to go in this other direction that's going to also seem unreasonable. And not everyone has to do that. There are people that are probably 500 pounds. They track their calories and maybe over time they just lost some weight and they got themselves out of the hole. But that's really rare. A lot of times it has to be this like crazy overcorrection all the way to the point where now somebody's, you know, I'm keto or I'm carnivore and they beat that drum and they feel good about that. Just like your wife was telling you, don't eat the bread. Like, yeah, fuck bread, you know. you kind of got
Dude,
this.
I didn't eat bread for 15 years. And then when I finally put bread back into my diet, I found very quickly that like bread in the absence of fat was not something I was going to actually overeat.
Right. And I want to address the thing that you said about the protein again, because, you know, Ted Naiman has done some of the best work in this space.
I love him. Yeah.
Oh, he's incredible. And he's talking about like protein leveraging. Protein leveraging is an amazing strategy. For people that don't know, when you start to really drive up the levels of protein, they've done studies in mice and they've done studies in humans where when you drive up the overall amount of protein that you eat, it tends to drive down your want and your need for calories. Interestingly enough, I think when you're in a protein deficit, when you're not consuming protein, I think this is just a theory of mine, it makes your metabolism rev up like crazy because your body is like, if you don't get some protein, you're going to die.
Right.
And so I think it revs up energy reserves so you can go kill an animal. That's just smelly theory. So So protein is really important though. And for people that are dieting and people that are big, I think that utilizing protein and leveraging protein can be super effective because it's just something to eat, and it's the least offensive of the macronutrients in terms of at least it appears that way. And now with some of the information we have now, it's like, well, maybe it's not so innocent after all. But anyway, I still stand by that. I still think protein leveraging is really powerful in helping people with their satiety. And obviously you have like vegetables and fruit and stuff like that, which can also help to add food volume. But to your point, where you're trying to really, have very, very lean amounts of meat, so you're not going over 30 grams of fat or 50 grams of fat or something like that, it gets to be more challenging. Now, what are you going to eat? Shrimp and scallops and, like
1% ground turkey, which sucks. Let's be honest. It sucks.
99% lean ground turkey, 93.7 lean ground beef. People might not know you're at like 30 grams of fat.
Yeah. That's my primary source of beef. And even then, and that's leaner than most cuts of steak other than filet. Filet might be a little leaner than that. You're still getting 30 grams of fat in a pound of that.
And it's great. And the fat is good. Like you're getting grass fed, grass finished, or whatever you can afford. Either way, it doesn't really matter, but it's some good saturated fat that you're adding into your diet. But it's quite a bit at one time. And a pound for, a guy that's like over 200 pounds, like that's pretty good. That's a pretty good meal. But if it's by itself, you're going to just completely annihilate that. So it's really important that people learn how to cook too. I think it's massively important. You don't need to be a chef or anything, but if you can learn just how to cook to your own taste buds would be a great start. If you can go to the store and get some, vegetable stir fry and then cook up some meat and some vegetable stir fry and add whatever seasonings are appropriate to your diet. If you can add in, starch because you're counting calories or you're, following the sugar diet. You're having your lean meat and your starch at night, then, you can add in anything that you want to it. But if you make, like an Asian stir fry type of meal or something like that with vegetables, like that's a pretty good amount of food right there. The problem comes when you're on most other diets other than the sugar diet is this need for sugar. Like, I really think that the body craves it. I noticed for myself, and, I've been dieting for a long time, and I kind of consider myself a diet ninja, nutritional ninja. And so I can kind of stick with things pretty good. Maybe not even as dedicated as some of the really high-level bodybuilders, but I can hang in there pretty good. I could have like 90% adherence, maybe even more like 95. I can keep things pretty clean. But when I was doing carnivore and doing keto, I always wanted all these like snacks, these keto carnivore snacks. And I know they're not great for you, but, the legendary, Pop-Tarts and just all the little treats, all the little side things. And why did I want those things? Well, I wanted stuff that was sweet.
Yeah.
I wanted stuff that I felt was going to kind of scratch that itch of something sweet. And they sort of did. Like, they usually work okay for me. But it was me just kind of adding more stuff in that I didn't need. Secondly, what that would do is what I call it flipping your taste buds inside out. So you have something that is super satiating, super satisfying. You have an amazing steak and a baked potato, or amazing steak and some vegetables, and it's awesome. And then there you are 2 hours later, like wanting something sweet. If you could just not eat something sweet, that would be amazing. But it's usually pretty challenging. The second that you eat something sweet, you want more of something sweet. You want, well, what else do I got? You start looking around. Oh, there's, leftover ice cream or whatever. You start to find things that you didn't even know you had, cookies, whatever else you got. And I did that for years until I was finally able to, beat some of that. But that took a long time. When you're sugar fasting, because you're consuming so much sugar, even though you're not quite getting to some of the sugars that you might want to get to, that you might find in ice cream and that you might find in a Snickers bar and peanut butter cups and so on, you still feels like you're scratching an itch that's close enough to the spot that's itchy to where you don't feel like you really need it. You can also, because a sugar fast, I'll explain what that is right now. A sugar fast is fruit juice, honey, maple syrup, table sugar, and candy. Those are like the 6 things that you can eat, and you can kind of conjure up whatever other versions of those things there are. There's, people found you can have like marshmallows and all kinds of stuff. I really, try to encourage people mainly to go fruit first and to have that be the majority of your nutrition, because if you're just getting stuff from candy, it doesn't have any micronutrients. It doesn't have cofactors in it that will help with digestion, absorption, and all those things. But when you're eating these foods, there's 2 things that happen. One, it seems like it mitigates some of the cravings. Seems like it pulls that down a little bit. You're also not intentionally being in a caloric deficit, so you're not tired. I think that tiredness and that fatigue also leads to poor decision-making with your food. And another thing that it will do for you is when you go off the diet, because I think it's fair game to have a cheat here and there. I know that's like really tough for people to think about, because they're like, man, I'm going to cheat and then I'm going to be like off, and I'm going to be like way off. I'm going to be off for the whole weekend. I think that going through that and messing up and just getting over it and learning, like, I can have a cheat meal, share that with a significant other, share that with whoever's in your house. Say, hey, Friday night, I want to have a cheat meal. But hey, can you help me? I just want to have a cheat meal, or a cheat meal and some little snack on the side or whatever. I think that when you're doing that and you're sugar fasting, you're kind of recognizing like, oh, tomorrow I'm going to have like a big ass smoothie in the morning. And if I want later in the day, I can eat some Nerds and some Sour Patch Kids. If you still felt like you had these cravings, like, okay, it's not the same exact thing as some of those pizza or whatever it might be, but you could still hit a lot of these things. And for myself, I found some interesting ways to navigate this, because what I'm doing is every 2.5 days, I'll break a sugar fast with lean meat and a starch. But
so your protein is coming every 2.5 days.
My protein right now is coming every 2.5 days.
And let me ask you this, because I was talking to I think he's a bodybuilder recently, and he was saying that the way he tracks mitigation of lean tissue loss in the gym with his clients is just in performance. So he's not putting people through DEXA scans or anything like that. He's just saying, if the amount of weight you're lifting isn't going down, you're okay. And so that's basically what I'm saying. Like with this, so I would imagine your protein is way reduced. You look great. You don't look like when I think about people who lose a lot of lean tissue, I'm thinking about like a guy who runs marathons. I know you've run a marathon. You didn't look like a guy who runs marathons, which is a compliment. You look very muscular. Have you noticed any declined performance?
No, if anything, I've just noticed an increase. Like, I just want to work out even more.
Right.
And that's kind of what has happened. I work out nearly every day, almost all the time anyway, but now it's been like, I'll work out 2 or 3 times a day. The workouts are a little shorter. The intensity at which I can go out is way different. Like, this is the hardest I've ever worked in my life. And this is the healthiest I've ever felt in my life. I just got some blood work done today, so we'll see what the results of that are. Maybe the blood work will tell me a completely different story than the way I feel. But I feel incredible. As you mentioned, you lose weight. You start to lose significant amounts of weight. There's always going to be some muscle loss. Interestingly enough, like when I have those fat pictures and I post them up, I always try to pick the worst ones. But there's a lot of photos where I might show it to someone. They'll say, "Oh man, look how fat you were," and I'm thinking like, "Holy shit, look how muscular I was!" Like,
yeah.
I was fat, but I was big and fat.
Yeah.
And you are going to lose. You'll probably lose a little muscle. You might lose a little bit of strength doing certain things. But I don't think it's necessarily special to the sugar diet. Again, so for me, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to lose muscle. I am on PEDs. I've talked about it a lot. Bigger, stronger, faster. I said, I love steroids. I'll probably be on and off them the rest of my life. I didn't realize that clip was going to be such a profound statement,
Right.
but it's very true. And so it's important for people to recognize that. And so if you wanted to take it a little slower and you didn't want to do the way that I'm doing it, then, just pick your own way of doing it to where, I know Nsima, who's my co-host on my podcast, he's doing the sugar diet, but he's like, I'm just going to have some protein every night because he's still stuck in like bodybuilder mode and he wants to really hold on to that muscle mass. And so if that's the case for you, then, maybe you only sugar fast like twice a week or something like that.
Is he hitting? Nsima's got to be 200 pounds, right? He's a big
Nsima's he's like 250.
250. Is he getting 250 grams a day and staying below the fat threshold?
He was keeping his protein pretty high. I think he lowered his protein down a bunch. And so that was a point that I kind of forgot to get to. When you liberate yourself away from protein, because usually what I recommend on these other days, these like days where you're sugar fasting for half the day and then breaking the fast with the lean meat, on those days, I'm usually telling people, 30 to 50 grams of fat and then also half your body weight or so in protein rather than the usually people say 1 gram or
right.
approximately around 1 gram. And the science shows like you can dive into this a bunch. And we had Stan Efferding come on my YouTube channel and talk about this. And Stan always goes to the expert of the expert that's like in the one little niche thing. And he found this, researcher that's been researching, protein amounts for a very long time. And it was all the way down to like 0.3. And it wasn't even 0.3% of your, it wasn't even 0.3% of your body weight. It was of your lean mass.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, holy shit. Like that's pretty crazy. Again, what I will say about protein, if you're confused and you're not following us very well, if you're not on this diet and you enjoy eating protein and you're doing well with that, like stick with that, because I still think that that's a good protocol because protein just gives you something to eat. And again, I think it's just maybe less offensive than some of the other macronutrients. Also something to consider, and one of the reasons I was saying I don't think carnivore is nearly as good as keto or sugar fasting. I think carnivore can potentially set some people up for some insulin resistance and maybe even some heart disease. Because if you're eating a lot of protein and you're eating a lot of saturated fat, I in no way am inferring that that's the same as eating sugar and saturated fat. However, it kind of looks that way in your blood. You know what I mean? If you think about what's happening, a lot of carnivores, they'll post their glucose levels. And their glucose levels are higher than someone who's on a standard American diet. Or they'll be higher than mine, which I'm eating like sugar all the time. To me, I'm like, I don't know how well that lines up. Like for the people that are losing weight, because losing weight is one of the healthiest things you can do. So for the people that are doing carnivore and losing weight, probably no harm, no foul. They're probably actually having really good health outcomes. But for other people that have maybe gained a little bit of weight or they're holding their weight, I think it can cause some insulin resistance. I felt like it did that to me for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It all gets very tricky. I think I tend to agree. If you're morbidly obese, any intervention, do it, try it, see if it works, see how far you can get. And when you've had enough of that, go on to another thing.
You know what? Do it and don't find an excuse not to do it. Because people might hear what I just said about carnivore and then they won't try it. But please, I'm urging you and encouraging you, just whatever the diet is that you think is going to fit well with you, because you might be like, I love meat and eggs. Please go ahead and do it. Try it for 30 days. But the key, I think what's been lost in weight loss is following the fucking scale. The scale needs to go down.
Yeah, no, I saw your post on this. I loved it.
Rule come on, the scale needs to go down. Like what we're using all these excuses. Oh, you're going through a transformation. Oh, you can walk up the stairs a little bit better. Your clothes are fitting a little. It's like we got to get rid of all this garbage. Like you're fat, and we needed to be less fat. We need to push that weight downward, and we don't need to be crazy about it to the point where you're hurting yourself or nearly blacking out or those kinds of things. Or maybe we do need that. Maybe sometimes we do need a little bit of that. Because you probably do have to, at some point, you got to take it to an extreme, because a lot of people were taking it to an extreme in a completely different direction.
Yeah. Mark, this has been a wonderful conversation. You've shed a lot of light on this, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, man. I love it.